Hello, welcome back to the L1 Links with Friends show. Today is the 25th, and we're doing business and social stories.
As usual in the business section, we will begin with collapse.
Oh, Lord. Microsoft is laying off 10,000 employees. This is insane in business. They've announced that they're laying off 10,000 employees. Only a few have already been notified that they're being let go, but a company-wide memo was sent to ask managers to identify employees that have to go. Some of those that have already been laid off have spoken out, and they include things like people who are 20-year veterans of the company.
QC.
But all of this, you know, in the wake of Elon Musk's haphazard firing people from Twitter, as we predicted, a lot of other companies looked around and said, you know, he's onto something. As long as we just do it better than he did, nobody's going to notice. And sure enough, in all of those articles, it mentions about how catastrophically bad that Twitter handled their layoffs. And it's like, well, at least it's Microsoft handling it well.
Yeah, that's like I was talking about earlier. It's like, well, yeah, we're doing something bad, but what about Elon Musk? Don't focus on us. And Amazon, we already know their number is up to 18,000, but now they are officially making the announcement as well.
Read the memos and the Amazon execs sent to the employees about job cuts. You heard it here first. We called it stealth layoffs almost a year ago. And they went from 33,000 job vacancies in just software developers to 200.
You're jumping the gun on that one.
Oh, yeah. There's a separate story on that. Oh, yeah.
There they
Amazon
are.
cut software development vacancies. So this is not just warehouse workers and not just, I mean, the warehouse workers are cut as well. They're subletting space in their warehouse. That's how insanely bad it is. No one's buying anything because the aforementioned collapse.
Also because Amazon sucks anymore for actually good products.
You have to worry about the product you're buying being a scam.
Right.
They will not get it to you anywhere near the time they promised they will. And the prices aren't that incredible anymore.
I think Walmart is not doing a good job here because the quality of Walmart products has far surpassed Amazon Basics or anything like that for just common household goods. And I really think Walmart could swoop in and be like, hey, look at us. We got power strips that won't burn your house down.
Yeah, they should really focus on Walmart quality. They should do a whole marketing campaign around that.
Yeah.
But there are Walmart products. Like I was getting my dad some supplements, like vitamins and stuff. And he was paying double at Walmart. So,
But who knows what, gutter oil was in the stuff you were getting from
no,
Amazon.
I mean, it wasn't an Amazon brand.
Right.
It was the same, one-to-one product.
You're probably getting a fake from Amazon. Same way we
That's
get
what I'm saying. Yeah, it's like it's full of gutter oil pills.
Yeah, it's like I'm ordering this brand of DisplayPort cable that I know is good from Amazon, and it's like, whoa, the packaging is different. The QR code is wrong and blurry on the packaging. What is going on?
It's also interesting that Walmart has a lot of exclusive packaging in terms of we've got the 250 pill bottle and no one else does because we're Walmart.
Right.
That's what our customers want. We know what our customers need.
Yeah.
And
But they're not so stupid as to pay twice the amount per pill.
Yeah. And Amazon also obviously looking to cut corners and cut costs wherever they can.
Amazon is going to close its charitable program, Amazon Smile.
What?
The subtext of this is our Amazon referral links just went into the toilet.
Yeah. They said, well, if you still want to donate, then those organizations can open up an Amazon wish list. That would be fine. But we're not giving them any more money.
Whoever bought the Sony Bravia home theater on our Amazon referral link, thank you. Thank you very much. Those days are probably over, though.
I used to use Smile quite a bit. That's
I see you. Thank you.
Well, you won't be using it anymore. Nor will these 12,000 people, most likely.
Google axes 12,000 jobs as layoffs spread across the tech sector. Can we have some of those people go work on Android? Because Android is just straight up trash.
Everything Google has is trash now.
Yeah, they really just. Maybe this will be. I mean, it's not good right now, but maybe good long term, if people can pull themselves up and make their own little competitor products. But that, considering the economic climate, not likely.
iOS is also trash.
And Twitter really never had anything of value in terms of monetization, but they did have advertisers. And now that Lord Musk has taken over, the advertisers have really soured on the bird. And so, again, we have to try to make money any way that we can.
Twitter auctioned off office supplies, including a pizza oven and a neon bird sign. What this article fails to mention is they also haven't paid their office rent in a very long time at a lot of their offices worldwide.
It's not looking good.
I think I keep waiting. Like one day I'm gonna go look at Twitter and it's just gonna be gone. That'd be interesting.
That would really be, a lot of people would be freaked out by that.
Yeah. Well, usually, so like if a site goes down, like if YouTube goes down or if there's a problem on another site, everyone goes to Twitter and is like, hey, is thing down? And then it'll pop up to trending. Where do you go to talk about Twitter being down?
Not Mastodon. And IBM was one of the early entries into the layoff section, especially against their older employees.
Dino babies.
They caught a lot of flack for that. And clearly they were looking at ways to still fire people, but technically not fire people.
IBM shifts remaining US-based AIX dev jobs to India, according to this source. Well, I mean, let's face it. New college graduates learning AIX? I don't think so.
And they did the whole redeploy thing. We talked about the redeploy thing last week, where they're like, well, you still work at IBM, but we don't have a job for you. So why don't you go inside of IBM and find your new job? But when they broke it down, it turned out that all the people who were given that task and still had not been accepted anywhere in IBM were dino babies.
Weird how that happens.
I don't know how long they'll float you. I mean, they're still getting paid as of now.
That sounds like illegal ageism, but with more steps.
A lot more steps. And, every crypto company at this point, they're falling like dominoes, obviously.
Crypto.com cuts 20% jobs amid significant damage to industry from FTX. Quick, somebody get Matt Damon on the phone.
The picture, like the logo in the background, it looks a little bit like it says piss. Just a little.
I think it says rise.
Yeah.
Yeah. Remember when that was a thing?
Remember when crypto prices did that? Actually, Bitcoin came back a little bit. We got a story about that.
A tiny, tiny, tiny little bit, yeah.
And, obviously the hardware picture not looking great. Things that we used to buy year after year, we are now not buying.
2022 global smartphone shipments were the lowest in nearly a decade. It's so bad that Apple canceled making the next cheap iPhone because you're going to just keep buying the old cheap iPhone, the iPhone SE. Covered that last week.
Who has money to buy a ton of new smartphones every year?
Yeah, very true.
Yeah, but they used to. Well, it turns out
we used to buy a lot of things. I used to buy eggs that didn't cost $4.
Have you looked at like the savings rate versus the credit rate? Discover, actually, they had their earnings call and they took a massive hit because they were like, yeah, we're going to be writing off a lot of this debt. These people are never going to pay us. And we've done the math. We're not getting that money because the U.S. consumer is all credit right now. I hope that they're not using those credit cards. I know some of you are, but you should not be using those credit cards to buy cryptocurrency.
Digital Currency Group halts dividends in an effort to preserve liquidity. Digital Currency Group, a venture capital firm that owns a stake in more than 200 crypto projects, announced that the dividend was on hold while they sort some things out.
Because of one of their subsidiaries, that being Gemini, and what's the other one that's tied up with Gemini?
Which is a perfect lead into our next story.
I can't remember.
Gemini Global Trading.
Collect this article as an NFT.
Genesis and Gemini.
Oh, yeah.
So I think Genesis is the bad one here. And they're claiming that, they had one of these complicated financial instruments and everybody's arguing about who ultimately owns the underlying asset, which is what happens in a financial collapse. Reuters is giving us a white screen here. Oh, here we go. Yeah.
Crypto lender Genesis is preparing to file for bankruptcy, according to Bloomberg News reports. They are not making it a secret that, it's not good. This model of infinite growth is faltering.
Everybody blaming FTX, but it's like, well,
that's just a convenience.
That was the spark, yeah, but you were sleeping on a bed soaked in gasoline.
But it smells so good.
Oh no, how could our empire of oily rags be crumbling? No.
I could have foreseen this. And if you are someone who says yes to this, I don't know what's wrong with you. You certainly should not be managing any sort of money in any aspect.
Is 3AC, is that Three Arrows Capital?
Yes.
Three Arrows Capital founders Zhu and Davies pitched to raise $25 million for new crypto exchange.
That's what we need.
Now,
I think this had a different headline when I read it.
remind us what happened to 3 Hours Capital?
They're gone.
Bankruptcy.
Yeah.
So from the ashes of a bankruptcy, these guys are like, hey, we've got a new idea. But the new idea is hilarious. The new idea is meant to facilitate the multiple claims on failed cryptocurrency firms.
Yeah. We've learned so much from our failed cryptocurrency company. We want to do it again. This time we'll get it right.
Our business model is counting on the fact that cryptocurrency firms are going to fail. And the SBF trial, we're getting some facts out of that. He is still denying everything. He says that he still has assets. He can still make this right. But the facts of the case are not looking good.
Sam Bankman-Fried ordered $65 billion secret backdoor line of credit. That's a quote from the lawyer in the case. And so they're going over stuff right now to say, hey, this is how this happens, blah, blah, blah. It's important to understand that SBF hasn't yet been charged with a crime. They're just sort of figuring it out. What's going on?
This gentleman, who is now state's witness, is the one who put the line of code in there and showed them exactly where it was. And yeah, it set out that $65 billion would, like, as long as you were transferring that to Alameda, it did not affect anything in the totals. It was just a one weird trick that financial regulators hate. We got 3 Verge articles in a row here.
Ooh.
Varga.
And they all have to do with Apple, who made a bunch of hardware announcements.
Apple announces revamped full-size HomePod 2 years after discontinuing the original. It looks like it's got new internals. It's new physical design. Who cares? This is going to come with the Matter protocol as well. That was the big news. It's like, look, we're going to support standards. You're not going to be locked in. I somehow don't trust Apple.
Yeah.
That's $300. That's a lot to put a spy in your home. Now, you might be more excited about this because, you know, the M chips have been pretty impressive and they are moving them to more and more of their lineup.
Apple announces a Mac Mini with the M2 and the M2 Pro. Okay.
That's great, I guess.
Someone in our audience might be excited about that.
Apple announces MacBook Pros with the M2 Pro and M2 Max chips. I checked. The most expensive one you can get is $7,000.
Yeah, that's no problem.
$7,000 laptop.
I will totally get full value from
Let's
that.
get 2.
Suddenly, it doesn't seem like such a bad deal if your programmer's only charging you on the order of $100 an hour, right? I mean,
Well, if they're using apples. If they come to the meeting and there's an apple on their computer, you know they're good. Apple, however, is clearly feeling the pinch like everybody else, and some of their pie-in-the-sky projects are getting the axe.
Apple indefinitely postpones the launch of its augmented reality glasses, according to Bloomberg News.
Not the same as the ski mask goggles, which are coming. These are the smaller actual glasses form factor.
Because the technology's just not there yet.
Yeah, it's
Probably.
Or the
literally-
ski goggles are going to be so much better.
This was updated and it's not quite as bad as it seems, but it's still terrible, right? I
Yeah.
mean, there is no forgiving this.
Apple TV expects you to have an iPhone in order to accept the new iCloud terms and conditions. Somebody that only had an Apple TV, every time they turned it on was like, you need to accept the terms and conditions on not the TV. And it's like, well, but what if I only have a TV?
Yeah, I kind of resent the idea that you have to have a smartphone for some of this stuff anyway.
Apple
So
it just didn't consider that, which tells you what kind of company you're dealing with.
it turns, if you shut the whole thing down, cut it off from power and let it like completely power cycle, the next time it comes on, it will force those terms and conditions as it boots. So you can get around that. But who would know that?
Yeah.
When your parents call you and they're like, I
That's-
can't, yeah.
That's a tough troubleshoot right there, especially over the phone. And maybe Apple's most controversial product in the last couple of years has been the AirTags. Super useful, and they've taught us a lot of things about government corruption and things like that, but also a lot of stalking, which is not great. I don't think Google has a plan for dealing with that,
No.
but they are wanting to get into that space.
Google reportedly working on Grogu. It's a tracker to compete with Apple's AirTags.
How is Disney copyright lawyers not all over their ass
Well,
for
it's
that?
a code name, so they're not going to launch it with that, I'm sure. Maybe they got a, like a licensing thing going on.
Can we reassign some of the Google team that's working on this to work on an Android keyboard that's not just straight up garbage?
No, absolutely not.
Or just application switching being stable? Like, should I have to close my email program in order to get new emails? Like, why would they be stuck all the time?
Why is Outlook so garbage now?
How,
Oh, Outlook is also garbage too, but that's not Google.
how
right.
would an improved keyboard help us stalk OnlyFans girls?
You know what sells? Stalking OnlyFans. You know what doesn't sell? Having a functional touchscreen keyboard.
You know what else doesn't sell is cloud gaming.
Stadia has shut down.
Rip. It's in the graveyard on that website of Google failed products.
Man, I wish we had a clip of when Stadia launched because I made a prediction about how long it lasted, and I wonder how close to accurate I was.
We do have one tiny little silver lining, though. They're going to give us something.
Google Stadia controller is getting Bluetooth support. You can download a thing and turn it into an ordinary Bluetooth controller instead of one that talks directly to the cloud. Well, that's good.
Great.
It doesn't even look like a great controller.
I'll put it right next to my QCat.
And we talked about this last week, but The Verge, they picked this up as well. It's becoming a big problem, but you really have to exercise some common sense when you're buying from Amazon these days.
No, you can't get a 16 terabyte SSD for $100. Even if the listing says shipped by Amazon, you're still getting scammed because Amazon does not care, as we said before. There's a manager somewhere that's like, oh, if we got rid of all these scam sellers, my numbers wouldn't look as good. So as long as you don't scam too much, we'll look over it. That's what's happening inside Amazon.
They're ruining their brand name because of that.
Now, these are fake reviews, but not just fake reviews. They also do the thing where they put like 5 different iterations of a product. Mm-hmm. It's supposed to be like different colors or different sizes or whatever. In the form of a hard drive, it kind of makes sense because it could be different. But they're using the good reviews from the real ones to trick you on the fake ones.
There are no real ones for a 16 terabyte SSD.
No, but they'll sell like a 2 terabyte SSD.
Yeah.
And people will be like, yeah, I like this. And then they'll pop the 16 one and that same product listing as a different size.
That's someone who's close to retirement and they're hoping they can just, do something and get out real quick.
Yeah, you have to abandon it pretty soon after that, right? Because you're going to get caught. And the Brits, they were chasing their own electric vehicle dreams, and those have come crashing horribly down.
British battery startup files for bankruptcy. This story is super frustrating because there's no technical details on why they failed. Was it lithium availability? Were they lying about their breakthrough technology? Was it a little column A, a little column B? What's
They
going
accidentally
on?
bought fish batter.
I think it was probably mostly column B because they never produced a battery.
Yeah.
They never had any kind of viable product. They just raised money and went bankrupt.
Tale as old as time.
Now here's a question. If we call something a standard, should there be 5 million different versions of it?
No.
And if it's a standard, should any part of that standard be voluntary?
No. USB-C can hit 120 gigabit with a newly published USB 4 version 2.0 spec. Can't tell you how many emails I've had for the USB-C KVM that's like KVM doesn't work, and it's like, are you plugging it into a USB-C port that doesn't support display out, which is the vast majority of desktop computers? And it's like, oh, yeah.
But this is voluntary.
Yeah.
It's not part of the standard. You can choose to do this if you want.
Which
but
no one will correctly.
What a mess.
I like how now we're at a point where there's all the USB-C ports on the back of the computer. We've got the 10 gigabit port. Well, there could be a 5 gigabit port. Usually 10 gigabit. But then there's the 20 gigabit, which is 2 10 gigabit ports on both sides of the connector. But then there's an actual 20 gigabit standard, which is USB 4 40 gigabit. But that's Thunderbolt. That's different electrically. But then there's also the combination USB-C plus DisplayPort alt mode, which you often find on a GPU. So in the back of your computer, you could have a USB-C port, a Thunderbolt USB-C port, the USB-C port on your graphics card, which is different from the USB-C port that's in Thunderbolt for display and USB delivery. And the cable will fit in all of them, but may not work or will behave wildly differently depending on which
Get
one you
different
plug
performance, yeah.
But the good news is they'll all perform about the same with your fake cable.
in. Yeah, if you get a really crappy cable.
That is a lot of the KVM support questions.
And Samsung is, they're beefing up their self-repair program that turned out to be not great.
Samsung's self-repair program adds the Galaxy S22 phones and some Galaxy books. It is still way more difficult than it should be. Everybody should go back to the LG, like the G5. Get that team on the horn. That's who should be on the Galaxy S24 to make it repairable.
And a year when probably nobody's buying a laptop is maybe a good year to go ahead and update some of those standards.
CAMM, the future of laptop memory, has arrived. It's a SODIMM replacement. It's 2 DIMMs in one. You can do dual channel because it's small and it doesn't take up a lot of room and it's modular and it's better than what Apple's doing, which is just soldering the memory on in a completely non-upgradable kind of way. This is less Z height than DIMMs and lower overall total real estate than the DIMM standard.
It's not some magical future tech either. Dell's already done it in production, and it went fine. But they don't own it.
Yeah.
It is open.
Initially, Dell got some flack for this because they were a first mover for this. And it was like, it's a proprietary module. But any complaint about that has been assuaged, and anybody can adopt this standard. So we'll hopefully probably see it in a lot of laptops and small form factor computers as well.
And MSI had a terrible update. Of course, you should always update your motherboard firmware. It solves a lot of hardware problems. And unfortunately, this introduced one.
MSI accidentally breaks secure boot for hundreds of motherboards. Breaks it as in it doesn't verify that secure boot is actually doing things, which could be a malware vector. Oops.
Trying to keep those nasty USB drives off of your system.
It's been broken for a while, as it turns out. They only just noticed. So if you get the update now, you'll fix it. But chances are, if you did a DIY thing, you probably have a system that suffers from this ailment and don't even realize it.
And we have a new kind of display, exciting thing coming up. This one does seem a little bit, I feel like CNET was a little too much hype train for this, but it does seem to be a unique thing because it's changed the way that the quantum dot behaves.
This next generation display technology is going to change the world.
I don't know that it will.
We've seen a new top secret prototype display technology that will soon be in TVs, phones, and more. So using quantum dots, it emits a photon that can then be shifted into red, green, or blue spectrum, which means that the pixels will wear evenly, which was the whole problem. And this is supposed to be the holy grail that solves that.
The old quantum dot, you used an existing LED to provide light to the quantum dot, which then provided its own light in a different color. These, there is no LED. It's electricity straight to the dot.
And theoretically, should wear evenly, no matter what color it is, which, yay!
We'll see.
Is your world changed?
If I could get a 32-inch 4K display based on this with 100 hertz or higher refresh rate, yeah.
Also,
it doesn't cost $3,000. I see you, LG.
It should be easier to make smaller displays for cheap based on this, what they're saying. So that might be cool. Do we need more displays in our life?
We need some good display. So consider that once we have something that is as good as OLED or quantum dot and it's 4K and 32 inches, blah, 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 that's your 10-year monitor. You'll never buy another monitor. For
They're
10 years.
never going to make a 10-year monitor. That would destroy their business model.
The first person to make a 10-year monitor is going to have a really good couple of years and then not.
And then they go out of business, or someone buys them out, and then they start making 2-year monitors where things just randomly break because it's how we build things now.
They'll find another thing to fail
Yeah.
and make it unrepairable. And speaking of business models that might not quite work out in the long run,
Basecamp details obscene $3.2 million bill that caused it to quit the cloud. Well, yeah, I mean, I took it not as Basecamp is unsustainable, but as Amazon charges too much.
no, I'm not talking about Basecamp's business model. I'm talking about
the
the cloud hosting business model. Yeah. Because there's no way that you couldn't have bought 3.2 million of hardware and hosted your own.
I've had this conversation with some people and they just can't believe that Amazon is not super cheap. And it's like, well, Amazon can be super cheap if you need all of this stuff and you can run on tiny fractions of that stuff. But if you need some real horsepower, it's going to be cheaper to just build your own, especially like if you're reserved instancing.
But they're downloading, you download music from that site. Yeah. So like you can't do fancy web technology to compress and deliver less to the customer, they're downloading files that they're always going to be the same size.
Yeah, I mean, look at Cloudflare effortlessly eating Amazon's lunch with their cloud file thing, which is, it's like, oh, we'll give you 2,000 terabytes for $200 a month, and we don't even care. Meanwhile, some analyst that works on S3 inside of Amazon's like, do what now?
And our loan
Design story.
did you check out the Wikipedia design?
I noticed it this week, actually, organically. Wikipedia's redesign is barely noticeable. That's the point. I actually thought I was on the simplified English site. And I was like, it looks a little different. And then I realized that they had updated the site.
Here it
it's
is
not
over
dramatically
the
different.
years. I was looking at some people who pointed out that they weren't using the screen real estate properly because they moved stuff into the main column and then just made it longer.
I don't mind that.
That drove me insane because when I moved to like 1920 pixels, it's like the reason I moved to 1920 pixels is to have more real estate. And then once that got to be common, everybody was like, well, make everything fill 1920. And then I moved up to 1440, and then it was the same. It's like, no, like the reason I'm moving is because I want more screen real estate.
Well, the issue is like if you start to widen a column of text to a certain point, once it gets really wide, your brain will start to get confused and you'll start to reread the same line of text over and over. That's actually a big problem with like book typesetting. And the same thing applies to screens. So that's why, even though you have all this space, they still tend to stick to a pretty small column.
Definitely a site that we all kind of have to use. Mm-hmm. And Apple has granted more benevolence upon you poor security deprived people.
iOS 13.6 expands advanced data protection option for iCloud encryption globally. The first paragraph says, oh, we do encrypted iCloud backups, but then you read on a little bit more and it's like, well, they still don't encrypt messages by default.
The CIA would not like that.
They're coming for me.
I don't know if you can hear that, but there's an ambulance outside.
We got reports that you stopped eating meat, son.
Be an American, do your part.
And you're complaining about the lack of encryption in the iCloud. What is wrong with you?
The Apple police. And we still have some spats going on among the big tech companies. And of course, they always run to authority to try to bolster their claims.
Spotify joins media firms to urge EU sanction against Apple's unfair practices. Well, Apple does have the monopoly on music on their devices. And if you want to color outside the lines, they will not let you. Even something as basic as a web browser. Consider that Chrome can't use their own web rendering engine on Apple devices. That's how insanely locked down Apple devices are.
I wondered when we did the speaker story, I forgot to mention it, but like with the speaker, are you allowed to use Spotify on it, or do you have to use Apple Music?
Yeah, it's like you want to use Bixby on that HomePod. Yeah, you can forget that.
Terrible. And the AI race, of course, is being waged by a couple of companies. OpenAI is in the lead, but we saw last week they got so many people popping up behind them. But you need a lot of horsepower to host and run that AI stuff. Who are you going to choose?
Microsoft Azure OpenAI service now generally available with ChatGPT on the way. Microsoft and ChatGPT seem to have worked out a deal, and it's coming. You got an early preview of this in Power Automate. If you mess around with Power Automate and you got in on the early beta, Power Automate plus the AI stuff plus other daily stuff, it's looking pretty crazy.
That's going to be so expensive, though, because remember when we were looking at, they were talking about what it costs to train an AI on the cloud per year? It was millions of dollars.
Ooh.
But Microsoft's it's sunk cost for them in that hardware. They already own it. So it's not like anybody else is using Azure for anything else. But see, now Azure's actually pretty good.
And you alluded to this in the Matter story. This was the new thing at CES that everybody seems to be getting on the bandwagon for because, of course, they want to spy on us in our homes. And this is a way to lower your defenses.
Why Matter mattered at CES.
There is no escape.
Matter, the protocol for your home automation. It's going to let devices work without the cloud, theoretically, and talk to each other across vendors. And you can mix Apple and Google and everything else devices because nobody wants a smart home that is weird and broken.
Again, I got to think that the law enforcement agencies are like, no. What do you mean your doorbell doesn't report to me?
The law enforcement wants the presence detect light switches to be able to report to them warrantlessly.
And this was Activision Blizzard. Yeah. Activision Blizzard, of course, like they do not need this headline right now.
No.
This is a terrible headline. But how did they do it? How did they handle this so poorly?
Yeah, it's so bad.
This could be like the nail in the coffin for your big merger. How did you let this happen?
Video game studio called Proletariat declines to recognize the union.
LOL.
Someone has already forwarded this to the European Union authorities, and this is going to be Exhibit A come Monday morning.
Well, Exhibit A is going to be the layoffs.
Yeah.
This is going to be Exhibit B.
Tell us again how this is good for competition.
I mean, good Lord.
So the proletariat people kind of universally all was like, yeah, we want this. And they're not stopping them from doing it because I don't think they can, but they are going to force the vote.
Yeah.
So it's kind of a probably a foregone conclusion. Maybe not. I guess it's good to let people vote on this kind of thing.
Yeah.
But it seems like they're all on board with it anyway. And the Bored Apes, they're still out there. Imagine still doggedly chasing that dead horse as the crypto world burns around you. But there are people doing it, and they're still trying to figure out ways to create value with it.
The first Bored Ape NFT game costs $2,300 plus for 3 weeks of gameplay.
You might get a couple skins in Overwatch for that.
Well, you get to keep those. You don't get to keep
yeah.
this.
Speculative Frenzy drives $12.8 million of transactions in just 1 day. This is somebody who's obviously never played Star Citizen.
This kind of looks like a 3D Flappy Bird. It doesn't look like a good game.
It's
And it's
probably not
also-
because it was probably put together in like 5 seconds with random assets.
It's also really heavily designed around feces. They're in a sewer.
Oh, because you're flinging poop, maybe because you're an
It's
ape. I don't know.
Something like Dookie or whatever. Like it's poop factors heavily.
Dookie is a funny word. I'll give it that.
Dookie Dash. That's the name of it.
Oh. It's like a burping app.
And Microsoft really, really, really wants you to move to Windows 11. They want it so much that they're willing to sacrifice sales for it.
Microsoft will end sale of Windows 10 licenses to customers this month. You're just going to have to buy Windows 11.
They're going to keep the security updates till 2025, but no more selling licenses.
Yeah. Good job, Microsoft.
And so, as I was putting the stories together this week, the first story Netflix related I put in was someone previewing the earnings. And they were like, Netflix is going to miss big this week. They didn't.
I didn't
That story was completely wrong.
Netflix blows away expectations on subscriber numbers. They added 7 million, and analysts were expecting that they would add 5 million. Seems like most of the growth comes from people cutting the cord over on the direct TV side.
And going for the ad tier.
The ad tier,
Like the
yeah.
cheap Netflix ad tier. Because this is the first subscriber count where they've included the ad people. Also, the CEO on the back of this amazing announcement has stepped down.
I think
He knows what's coming.
He was super anti-ad, and I think all of the rest of the executive team is like, we got to do ads.
Well, and like, how good will this be? It'll be good for like 1 quarter, and then it's like, oh, now people don't want to pay for the ads. Also, we've canceled a lot of good shows, and people are starting to know that we cancel things all the time.
Well, that was one of their things. They said, like, we have to run the ads to be able to keep making the shows. But you still have to pay for the ad tier, right?
Yeah.
It's just
Yeah.
less. Oh, terrible. We're back to the TV model.
But
It's so
really,
terrible.
yeah, like I don't.
If they're-
As soon as Netflix starts kicking me off, I think I'm just done. Like,
Oh,
I'm not gonna get an
I
account.
think I forgot to add that story. That's next week.
Yeah,
Yeah.
I'll start getting that message.
I think also Netflix misses the boat on canceling the things. I think they could poke fun at it. It's like, do you want us to keep a series running as long as Game of Thrones? It's like, no, we pride ourselves on canceling the series when it has a satisfying ending. That's not true.
Well, why pay? I've heard a lot of people say like, "Oh, I don't want to start a series on Netflix because I don't know that it'll ever get past its first season." Like, and that's their reputation now.
Yeah.
Yeah, I was looking at one where some streaming service, they had the final season. I can't remember what the show was, but they had the final season. It was done. It was in the can. It was ready to run the next year, but they figured out that they could actually make more money with a tax break by writing it off.
Yeah.
So they're
Yeah.
just like, yeah, we're never ending it. Just go sell that to somebody else. It was
That's
already
insane.
done.
Yeah, that's insane to me.
And
What a good way to like spit in the face of the people who are paying for your product.
What happens to a series like Firefly? Because eventually Netflix will have something that's like Firefly, that they cancel, and then the fans are like, "What did you do?" And they freak out, and it's like, does that come back? Like, what happens?
There's a lot of shows like that Netflix has canceled. Like that's their reputation.
Those shows that come back later, though, like even like
They're not as good.
Arrested Development,
Yeah.
they couldn't
Yeah.
recapture it.
Well, with Arrested Development, I only watched season 4, which was the first Netflix season, and they couldn't get all the actors like their
Right.
schedule together. So like every storyline was separate, and then it wasn't funny.
Bad news. And Bitcoin, oh, just a tiny glimmer, a tiny ember in the ashes of the crypto world.
Bitcoin retakes 20K, leading as broad crypto rally continues. Oh, I'm going to encourage the crypto bots in the comments below. No.
You can see up here, it actually has held 21.4 as of the filming time here.
You're cursing it so that by the time this is on YouTube, it's like,
Yeah, it'll be back down.
We mentioned this a little bit last week. We really didn't go into too many details. This has been a real scandal.
This has been a hot
since it
story.
started. But I will say, for once, it's rare that this happens productively, but the internet outrage machine, and I think this goes to the fact that probably the people who are into this are not your usual Twitter Redditor fleeting people. These are people who care deeply about this, and they were not backing down.
game makers staged mass exodus from Dungeons & Dragons open license. Wizards of the Coast is a quote-unquote existential threat to our game, one publisher says. Yeah, that's not untrue.
Now, Wizards of the Coast has completely backed down, and they have now gotten completely rid of the open license. They are embracing a license that is tried and true.
D&D will move to a Creative Commons license to request feedback on a new OGL. So this may still negatively impact gaming companies, though, that have adopted this. We don't know. We'll see.
I don't think we should forgive them.
No.
You don't trust Wizards of the Coast. I learned that a long time ago with my Magic card.
You can't forget this because, yeah, like, they'll wait till everyone kind of forgets for a little bit, and then they'll try to sneak it back in again.
Yeah.
I remember, do you remember the first time? Like, so there was Magic the Gathering cards, and it's like, oh, you can, combine them together, and it's all good. And then they came out with the next year cards, and they said, oh, you can't use the really old cards anymore. Those aren't tournament legal.
Well, they're too powerful. We've balanced the game. So the ones that are super valuable that you were hoarding to try to make money off of, those are gone. We don't do those anymore. No, it's going to keep happening.
I meant never again for me.
Look at Pokemon cards.
It's like, oh, this is a fun, exciting card game. And then, yeah, I didn't get into Pokemon because of the negative experience of, what do you mean I can't use my cards? That was the fun metagame, is figuring out like how to build something that broke the game mechanics.
Now we have indie roguelikes to fill that.
Yeah.
void. So much better. And here's we're moving into social media. We've got a very muted social media section today. Not a lot happening in the social media world other than Twitter. But this is, talk about the Spider-Man meme. Meta complaining someone is surveilling them? Come on.
Meta sues surveillance company for scraping data with fake Facebook accounts. Voyager Labs. So they were using this data for surveillance. But I thought it's funny because a lot of ad agencies do exactly what Voyager Labs does. And because those ad agencies give Facebook money, it's okay.
But Voyager Labs,
Facebook looks the other way.
Voyager Labs got some really nasty headlines because what they were doing is they were doing pre-crime predictions. Yeah. And some police agencies actually signed on to that, and some people actually got arrested.
Meta did not care until there was negative press around. It's like, well, how did they do that? And they were scraping the data. Oh, no. Just like Cambridge Analytica. Same pattern.
And that thing was in, San Francisco?
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, the San Francisco cops might show up to your house and be like, hey, you're going to do crime later in the week. Come with us, son.
Do crime.
And, yeah, just
do a crime.
Generic crime. What crime am I going to do? We don't know. You're not going to do any. That's the whole point. Taking you in. And Elon Musk is now in court, and the wheels of justice, boy, they turn so slowly. We are just now doing the funding secured lawsuits. And
Grimes is involved in that.
Yeah.
oh, I wonder if there's any old feelings coming back.
They unfollowed each other this week on Twitter, probably because of the court case.
Yikes. Well, if you remember, Musk's tweets were really terrible. Like,
memes, yeah.
He should lose. Well, no, the things he said were fraud.
Yeah.
And there's no way to argue around that, except his lawyer is doing his very best.
Musk's lawyer argues that the false tweets were just technical wordsmith inaccuracies. But all you need to know from this article is ultimately the judge said, assume every word in those tweets was false.
Now, the people suing him, these are the shareholders suing him, not the SEC. That's already done. One guy lost his entire life savings of millions, maybe hundreds of millions of dollars. But if you put all of your hundreds of millions of dollars in one stock, should we really feel bad for you?
Putting all your eggs in one basket, as it were.
Diversify.
Some of this stuff in the court case made it sound like these individual investors didn't have millions of dollars, that it was their life savings, but their life savings was like $100,000 and they lost everything.
They were leveraging. Well, listen, you leveraging everything in one stock and you're playing leverage. You deserve to get burned there. I'm sorry. That's a stupid person. I'm not saying that Musk is innocent in this. Certainly not. And Musk, of course, introduced the blue tick program. It went terribly wrong. They scrapped it.
Continues to go terribly wrong.
Yeah.
Well, but like you were talking about earlier, you get rid of it, you wait a little bit, and then you ease it back in.
Yeah.
But it's still just as bad as it was before.
You know if you let just anybody buy blue ticks, then anybody will buy blue ticks. You know who's buying blue ticks? The Taliban. Like, this is a BBC article. Look at this. This is crazy.
There's that moment of like, they're setting it up and they're like, $8 a month.
Historians are going to look back and it's going to be like, Hitler bought a blue check.
I love that the Taliban is just ignoring their entire past. And it's like, no, we're a legitimate country. What are you talking about?
But then they like continue to do the things that they've always done.
But if you think about like ignore, nation state and start looking at like BlackRock, they do the exact same thing.
Can someone inside the Kremlin buy some blue check marks?
Absolutely.
Well, you have to launder it through another country.
You might not have the rubles for that, but
And the TikTok thing, it's dying down a little bit. We do have all of the, legislation that's rolling through right now, probably going to pass. But individual entities continue to malign TikTok.
TikTok blocked on University Network. This is the University of Texas at Austin. I think
a lot of universities have started doing this. It's not just Texas.
This was posted on January 17th. We couldn't have done their
Yeah,
press
we
release.
did another story about other universities doing the same thing.
There's a lot of them doing it at this point.
Yeah.
Lord.
If you're connected to university Wi-Fi, you cannot access TikTok.
It's because federal money.
Right.
They're terrified that, especially in Texas, you might get some legislation.
It's funny too. If you have the federal projects and stuff, they're now making you sign a thing that's like you're not using Hikvision or ZTE or certain other brands of network or telecommunications equipment, just on premise. Like not connected to the grant or the federal money or anything. It's like, no, you don't have any of this brand equipment in the building, which is interesting.
Now, did we ever do an actual story about this? We talked about it.
We talked about it.
I don't think we ever did an actual headline. It's a little bit older. This is from the 10th, but I don't think we've ever covered this in detail.
Gaming on this platform is now in turmoil thanks to new violence and profanity rules, which basically, if you bought into the whole YouTube gaming thing, I'm so sorry. It was a terrible idea because now when you talk about those things, it will be rated the same level as whatever the thing is that you're playing or showing or whatever.
But the new information here is that they're not just now. Because even though you posted those videos that they were fine with the terms of service, when you posted them, you are getting retroactively demonetized and flagged for all of your content that violates this, which is a large majority of popular video games.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I mean, we know that mature rated games generally get hit by this, right?
Yeah.
Violence. And we also know what the most popular game in the world is, CSGO. So
You literally can't have some of the sound bites in there if the wrong team wins.
you know what? I think when YouTube censors like this, I think that's when the terrorists win.
It really makes you think. We live in a society.
What have we got lined up for Friday?
Nonsense.
Robot space and nonsense on Friday.
I started to clap, but I didn't want to clap in
The
mic.
robot section is really getting padded out lately too because of all the AI news.
Yeah.
So much.
I'm looking
AI
forward to
news.
the Cluttercore nonsense story.
Yeah, I put that in just for bait.
That made me uncomfortable to look at.
Yeah.
I hate that.
I looked up a lot of images for that because
Ooh.
I was trying to find a good article with good pics. But
So much clutter.
Really dislike that.
all right. We'll see you guys then. Bye.